Hi everyone. This video is to walk you guys through your first essay. You guys have read a number of stories in this unit from different authors all across different genres, eras, movements, historical situations, and subject matter. So you guys are going to get to choose what is of most interest to you. And for this essay, you're going to develop a written argument over one of the stories that you read in this unit. So you're going to analyze that story in terms of literary merit and specific narrative elements. So the prompt here is very simple. Choose one of the stories that you read in this unit, develop a written analysis of that work, contextualize the analysis by integrating the specific literary terminology that you have learned from the course lectures. So for example, characterization, setting, point of view, allegory, myth, symbolism, etc. You're going to create a concrete thesis statement around a central literary focus and include specific main ideas supported with lots of good evidence from the text. So you guys have actually done this on a small scale in the first few weeks. You did a mini essay structure where you followed a sort of a general outline and you created this sort of hypothetical essay structure. So what you're doing here is that, but on a larger scale. So the choices that you guys have are The Story of an Hour by Chopin, Everyday Use by Alice Walker, Hills Like White Elephants by Hemingway, Cask of Amontillado by Poe, Yellow Wallpaper by Gilman, Good Man is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor, A&P by Updike, The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, and Amy Tan's Two Kinds. So as you're reading, or as you're writing, I want you to kind of think about the following. So what is the primary literary element that you want to focus on in your argument? I would not try to attack all of them. It's too much to try and talk about why the setting, the characters, the plot, the conflict, the myth, the allegory, everything is important in a story. What I would suggest is focusing on a primary element that you want to focus on in your argument. So for example, in the Cask of Amontillado, I might focus primarily on setting. In the Yellow Wallpaper, I might focus on conflict. Story of an Hour, I might focus on characterization. There is a lot that you can talk about in each of these stories in any of these elements. So you really can't go wrong, but I would definitely choose something that is very prominent. I wouldn't, for example, talk about setting as the primary focus of the lottery. Instead, there I would focus on symbolism. In something like the Cask of Amontillado, I may not focus primarily on plot, but instead I would focus on theme or setting or conflict. You also want to think about what is the argument that you're going to be making about that literary element. You can't just say that setting is important in the Cask of Amontillado. That's not an argument. That's an obvious statement. Remember, in your thesis, you are extending an argument to your audience about a particular aspect of a text. So if I wanted to talk about, say, Hills Like White Elephants, I might say that the conflict of man versus man is prevalent within the story, and it illustrates a post-war reality that young Americans were not prepared for. That is an argument. If I was going to do Two Kinds, I might say that characterization and development of a round character is central to the story. Actually, in that one, I would also bring in the idea of conflict of man versus self to kind of understand how the main character has this divided self. And I would argue that she alleviates the conflict of man versus self to have a whole self by the end of the narrative. These are arguments about specific literary elements. So that doesn't mean that I only include just setting for Cask of Amontillado. I can integrate other elements as well to achieve this goal or message or meaning. I can talk about the conflict between man versus man, between Fortunato and Montresor. I can talk about the historical context surrounding, Carnevale. I can talk about the thematic issues or the symbolism or the motif of Amontillado. I can talk about the setting of the catacombs and why they're important. All of this I can absolutely talk about, but my central thematic argument is going to be about sort of one idea. And then I also want you to think about how authorial intent plays into the structure. So Why does the author, think about why the author includes specific characters or events or symbols or plot points or conflicts or aspects of the setting or imagery. Why are those things there? Why does it matter? So, for example, in everyday use, the quilt as a symbol is incredibly important. Why does the author use a quilt? Why doesn't the author use, say, a shovel or a leaf from a tree? Why use a quilt? What does it represent? Think also about the critiques that you could make surrounding the text. So in a very scholarly manner, I wouldn't ask you to make a critique about something you just didn't like or something about the text that just didn't speak to you. I want you to think about the critiques you can make from a scholarship point of view. So, for example, say, the Cask of Amontillado, I might discuss the idea of madness and whether or not Montresor is mad. And I might make a critique that Poe could do X, Y, or Z to keep that idea of madness more elusive. Or I could make a critique that he needs to do X, Y, or Z to make that more clear and that it would help the story in this way. You do need to include at least one research resource in your work. Make sure you cite it correctly in the text and include it in a bibliography along with whichever short story you choose. You should choose incredible, informed sources that influence the argument that you are making and support your ideas. So you'll pull specific quotes from that research source, so say bibliography.com or biography.com or PBS or any number of credible websites. As long as it's not something uncredible like a blog or Wikipedia, it should work just fine. You do need to have a clear thesis with your main ideas, and then you expand on that with lots of good evidence from the text. So this means that you pull in specific quotes from the text to show your audience what you're talking about. So if I want to talk about Cask of Amontillado and I want to talk about whether or not Montresor is mad or crazy, I might bring in a quote and wherein he's saying, you might think I'm mad, but I'm not, and here's why. And then I'd analyze that quote. Your essay does need to be 3 to 4 pages in length and is due by Sunday, March 3rd at midnight. Now, when I say 3 to 4 pages, you can always write more, you just can't write less. That 3-page means you must be down to the bottom of the 3rd page at minimum. You cannot write less than that. If you do, you lose points. Make sure you have proper MLA formatting. Make sure that everything is cited because everything will be checked through the plagiarism detection tools. Your final essay grade is not just based on your final draft. You are going to do a couple of different things in the next couple of weeks. So you are going to complete an outline this week, and then you're going to complete a peer review submission as well. So both of those will give you 15 points on your essay. So if you do both of those things, then you have an automatic cushion in your grade. The final draft itself counts for 70 points or 70%. You're going to be assessed on making sure you have a good close analysis of the work and its major concepts, lots of solid concrete evidence to support your claims from both the primary and the secondary research source, proper number of research sources, so 1 in this case, proper page length, MLA, citations, fully developed essay structure including a significant introduction with clear thesis and main ideas and a conclusion. And then a careful, clear analysis and organization of all ideas. Some helpful ideas when you're writing this essay, just as a reminder, think about these things. Characterization, think about literary devices, think about structure, literary concepts, historical context. There's a lot of different things you guys have studied and you know how to integrate into this argument. So if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, you guys should be pretty good. And I remember that I've kept this fairly broad on purpose because I want you guys to choose the story that spoke to you most intuitively and the one that you really feel like you have the most to say about. So make sure you choose wisely.